Hello everyone and welcome to another Workout Wednesday walkthrough. I'm Curtis Harris. This is week 4 of 2019 and this week we're looking at a challenge by yours truly. So I don't want to give a full walkthrough. I do know how to complete this challenge. I built it and I don't think you'll get value from me walking through something I already know how to do. So that said, I do want to give you a walkthrough of the data prep piece of the challenge. I have seen a couple comments about people not being able to complete it in Tableau or just not knowing what I meant, possibly. So I do want to give you a walkthrough on that piece. And with that said, let's get going. So if you see here, I want you to look at the number of records, extend your data, and bring in more data than you started with, using just basic tools, Tableau, Excel, Google Docs, etc. You can do this kind of thing if you're good with SQL, have that kind of technology, you have Alteryx, Python, whatever, but sometimes we're going to be stuck in Tableau and Excel. And that's not necessarily a bad thing if you know what you're doing. So if we move over to Tableau, I'm going to walk you through exactly what I meant by extending the data, bringing in more data than you began with, and joining these two data sources together. So I've already connected to the Google Doc or Google Sheet containing the Workout Wednesday data. And we're going to start with our employees data source. As you can see here, we have a data source that's one row per employee that represents an employee ID, a hire date, and a potential term date. We don't know, or we don't have term dates for every employee because not every employee is terminated. But for the ones who are terminated or no longer work at this fake company, we do have an end date. And the challenge I was faced with at work recently was to use data exactly like this, one row per employee or per anything, right? And bring in the additional dates that fall between these other two. And I didn't have access to other tools such as Alteryx to complete this project, so I had to figure it out in Tableau. And if we look at the dates data source, let's just remove this for now so we can look at each one individually. This is just a scaffold of dates starting at 1/1/2018 and going out till 1/22/2019, which was yesterday's date. This could theoretically go out forever. The situation would work exactly the same. If you want to do something like this and you need it to scale for a while, you could build out a date scaffold that goes 20 years into the future, 100 years into the future, and it will scale until you hit that point, which in all likelihood your company will not exist anymore, and neither will you. So you don't have to worry about it. Build out the scaffold for longer than you expect to live, and you're good to go. So let's get rid of the morbid talk, but that's just one idea. So here's our date table. We have every single date between 1/1/2018 and 1/22/2019, one row per day. Let's remove that, bring back in our employees, and then let's drop our date file onto the view. So we have two data sources, employees and dates. And we know that they don't always line up together. There's not a one-to-one relationship between these two. I could join on hire date to date, but that will only give us matches. So we're not really extending our data at all. We're keeping it the same number of records this way. I could do it on term date, and the same thing. We'll actually lose data this way because the nulls will drop out. What we want to do is use a join calculation. If you saw here, I clicked on my field options and said create join calculation. And we're just looking for something that always equals each other, right? So you could do any number here and will make sense. So I could say 1 or 2 or 1,900,000. Doesn't matter, right? But for simplicity's sake, we're just going to use 1. So 1, and on the right side, we'll do the same thing. We'll create a join calculation of 1. So we're saying join these two files together where 1 equals 1. And when does 1 equal 1? always, every time. You're slapping a 1 on every single row of your employee's data source, and you're slapping a 1 on every single row of your date's data source. And by creating that formula, you're essentially saying, combine these two data sources and create a Cartesian join for the two. So now you have one row for every date for every employee, which is too much. So employee ID 50 or 1 now has a row for every single date from 1/1/2018 to 1/22/2019, which is not ideal. We want employee ID 1 to start at 3/1 and go until whatever today's date may be. So we're going to create a quick calculation on that. So I'm just going to hit one of these fields, create a calculated field, and then write something like a Boolean calculation. So now that we know we have one row for every employee, for every date in the date file, we can work on our logic there. So we want our date from the date file to be greater than or equal to the employee's hire date. We also want our date from the date file to be less than or equal to today's date or the term date, which is an easy calculation there. So this says only bring in fields or where the date is greater than or equal to the hire date and the date is less than or equal to today's date or the employee's term date if it's available. That is a true, and the rest are falses. And these are the ones we want to bring in where this criteria evaluates to true. So if we hit OK, we can see false here for employee ID 1 because these are before the employee's hire date. And eventually we would see trues here. I could probably just sort this for us and we could see them. Regardless, it'll be fine. So if I hit this, let's just bump up our rows here. We have 19,350, which is still too many. We just created a calculation. We want to add a data source filter on our valid dates field and hit true. And if I hit true, then that's going to bring in those valid dates. Employee ID 1 has every day now between 3/1/2018 and today, or 1/22/2019 per our date file. And you can see the magic number here that the workout was looking for, 5,947 rows of valid dates. And that's it. This was all you needed to do to get through to the visualization piece of the challenge. So this is just one quick and easy way to prepare your data and bring in more data than you started with. It's really just enhancing your data. You could produce a similar visualization as the challenge is asking for without doing this, but this gives you some extra marks and extra data points to work with to produce a more interesting visualization. So think about the data source page the next time you're using Tableau. I think sometimes people overcomplicate things with data prep, and using the tools that you have at your disposal, such as just using Tableau to do this simple task, is a really good way to get started thinking about data prep. So from here, have fun with the rest of the challenge. You can go to sheet 1 and start building out the visualization. Have fun this week. See you later.